Strike a scoffer, and the simple will become wary. Rebuke one who has understanding, and he will discern knowledge. Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the backs of fools. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share two verses from Proverbs chapter 19. Strike a scoffer, and the simple will become wary. Rebuke one who has understanding, and he will discern knowledge. Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the backs of fools. A scoffer is one who says, "There's no danger, there's no problem, I can just do it." He takes no heed to instruction. So when you speak to him about the dangers of some particular action and try and explain it, he's not interested in listening. He denies the danger. But some things are not good for society because others get injured along the way. And so the second verse of our two that we read, verse 29 of Proverbs 19, says, "Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the back of fools." There is a time for speaking and warning, but ultimately there are consequences of actions, and God is the one who orchestrates those consequences. So in our modern society, we have those who scoff at God's plan for marriage, God's plans for salvation. God is patient with these people, giving them several opportunities to hear the message and to respond to it. But it is appointed unto men once to die, and after this the judgment, where men will be held to account for the decisions, for the words that they have made. But God's instructions for marriage are not just arbitrary rules to spoil our fun. It's actually how the system was designed to operate. And if we flout those instructions, then the consequences come in our lives and in the lives of those that we love. I understand from the teaching of Jesus that when we stand before him, he won't have to quote Moses to condemn us. He will be able to quote our own mouths. You claim to have such wisdom? This was the wisdom you spoke, and this was the action you performed. You have condemned yourself. And so we will all recognize God's judgment as a just judgment on us when the facts are revealed to us. And we won't be able to say it wasn't fair, God didn't warn us, because the message has gone out in all the earth. And in Romans 1, we're even told that it is in the heavens. The glory and power of God is clearly seen in the things that he has made. So the scoffer who says there is no God is just making an excuse for himself not to do the will of God. It is the fool who says in his heart, Psalm 2 tells us, there is no God. Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the backs of fools. In other words, evil will come into your life. And if it doesn't come into your life, then punishments await you in eternity. Because every wrong must be righted. God is a God of justice, as well as mercy and forgiveness and goodness and truth. And so the scriptures are a key element in bringing us rebuke and correction, that the man of God might be complete, trained for every good work. This is what God's desire is for each of us. He has made us, and he has put us in a particular position with particular gifts, that there are particular things that we can do that are good, that bring beauty, that bring healing, that bring health. And so Proverbs says, strike a scoffer, and the simple will become wary. That is, those who see judgment on others will learn from it. My wife frequently talks of one of my daughters who learned a lot from watching her older sisters get into trouble. And she would never do anything that would get her into trouble. She became wary of getting into trouble. She didn't want to get into trouble. And that's a very good attitude for us all to have, to be wary of getting into trouble, to be careful about the things that we do, because it protects us from so much strife. Rebuke one who has understanding, and he will discern knowledge. When we see a person doing something that is not good and right, it is important to bring rebuke. The scriptures bring rebuke, and we should bring rebuke and tell the person that is not right, that shouldn't be done, and we should always be able to give a reason for our rebuke, why something is not right, why it is not good. A person of understanding will see the reason. David was king. He was highly respected. People did what he said. He spied a woman bathing and invited her up. They made love. She fell pregnant. He then tried to cover it up, getting her husband to come back from the war, but he didn't sleep with his wife. So he sent a message back with the soldier to the commander, "Let this man get killed in the battle." And so he was. God was not pleased. Who would rebuke the king? He sent his messenger, Nathan the prophet, who came with a story. There was a rich man who had a visitor, and he wanted to feed him, and he stole a sheep from a poor neighbour. The neighbour just had one sheep. The rich man had many, but he took his neighbour's sheep and slaughtered it for the visitor. David was horrified. "That man deserves to die. He'll pay back fourfold," David said. "Who is he?" "You are the man," the prophet said. David was a man of understanding. He understood that he was guilty. He had condemned himself. He didn't punish Nathan the prophet. He confessed his sin to God. When Paul taught those who opposed him, he didn't just yell at them and try and dominate them with the strength of his voice. He didn't try and overcome them with the strength of his personality. He sought to overcome them with the strength of his argument, the logic of the presentation that he made. And those who are rational and logical beings, who are searching for truth, will see the logic of the argument and will submit to it. So we have a lot of people today who think that evolution is the truth. But evolution is not the truth. It's the hugest deception of all time, and contrary to all the evidence. It's contradictory to the first page of the Bible and to history. The frequent evidence of evolution is long ages. Just about every science show that you'll hear on TV will talk about thousands of millions of years. Well, what is the evidence for millions of years? The only way that they can estimate the age of something is by analysing it in the present. And one of the ways is an argon-potassium ratio. Argon is a gas. And so the argument is when a rock forms, there's no argon in it, so the amount of argon present is an indicator of age. This is a clock that has very long ages. And that sounds very rational. But then you go to the rocks that were formed from the lava from Mount St. Helens, and you do the test on them. These rocks were formed 50 years ago, and you find that they are millions of years old. But history tells us they are not millions of years old. Do we believe the chemical analysis, or do we believe history? We must believe history. And the history of the creation of the world and its subsequent destruction in the flood is contained in the Bible. Is it just myth? The record in the Bible has been studied for thousands of years by many intelligent people and has never been falsified, despite many attempts. So we are just left with scoffers. If we scoff at these things, we don't investigate them and we ignore the warning, then judgments are prepared for us. If we don't learn the easy way by instruction, then we must learn the hard way. Strike a scoffer, and the simple will become wary. Rebuke one who has understanding, and he will discern knowledge. Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the backs of fools.